But let's pivot. As we're talking college hoops, who better to bring onto the show than a man who was named Coach of the Year in the ACC twice? ESPN college hoops analyst Seth Greenberg joining us here on Bet. Seth, we appreciate the time, first and foremost. You look fantastic. I want you to take a look at something here right out of the gate. The number 1 and number 2 seeds in college basketball are fantastic. According to Joe Lunardi, Gonzaga 19-0, Baylor 17-0, a combined 36-0 on the season. They've separated themselves from the pack in virtually every statistical category. However, if those two teams are to fall in March by some stretch, who's a potential sleeper you could see winning the whole thing?
I've got 3 sleepers for you. First and foremost, when you look at it, I like this Rutgers team. Rutgers is the sleeper of all sleepers. You say Rutgers, they haven't been to the NCAA Tournament since I had hair on my head. But this is a different Rutgers team. I'm talking about Rutgers. I'm talking about Jim Valvano's Rutgers team. They're big. They're physical. You're talking about Ron Harper Jr. He's a big guard that can get in the lane and make plays. You're talking about Geo Baker, who makes big shots at the end of the games. Miles Johnson's been terrific. They defend, they rebound the basketball. I like Florida State. Now, they've been on pause. But you talk about Florida State, it's strength in numbers. And they've got a couple guys that are difference makers. You talk about Scotty Barnes, a 6'9" point guard. You talk about Raekwon Gray, a 6'8" power forward who could also be a point forward. Talking about shot makers and MJ Walker. You know that Florida State's going to defend. You know they're going to rebound the basketball. You know they're going to wear you down with numbers. Then finally, Ohio State. Ohio State is playing as efficiently as any team in the Big Ten right now. Ohio State, they've got depth, they've got versatility, and they've got skilled players. They've also got experience. 7 of their top 9 are juniors and seniors. 2 of those guys are fifth-year seniors. What's going to win the NCAA tournament this year? Upperclassmen, because exactly what you guys were talking about. With the pandemic, with the adversity, with basically understanding that you got to have patience, you got to have multiple plans, and you got to react to the different things that are going to happen. Those veteran teams have a huge advantage because they have shared experience, they have toughness, and they've got maturity.
All right, Seth, as we get closer to March Madness, what can we realistically expect in this big dance and in this tournament? Do you expect all 68 teams to make the tournament? Are you expecting 68?
I am expecting 68 because if someone tests out, to play in the tournament, you've got to have 7 consecutive days of negative tests. But what the NCAA is going to do is they've got that group that were supposed to or allegedly going to play in the NIT, something I know a little bit about. All right. And that group, if someone tests out, they're just going to slide in. And as they see the NIT teams, they're going to slide those teams into the NCAA tournament field. So I think we will have a field of 68. I think we're going to be in Indianapolis. I know we're going to be in Indianapolis. We're going to have protocol. And there's 3 things you got to have. You got to have patience, you got to have multiple plans, and you've got to have protocol. And the protocol will be in place so that in case someone does test positive, as the start of the tournament, you can slide someone in. Once you start the tournament, you're going to finish the tournament. Now, could someone potentially maybe eliminate themselves by having a positive test later on? Possibly, but we're going to have 68 teams in the field.
Seth, I read an article this week that said this year's Kentucky team couldn't win 6 games in the Southwestern Athletic Conference, or SWAC. That's where Prairie View sits atop the mountain. They're perfect, I believe, 6-0 in conference. Now, extreme exaggeration aside, what are the major problems plaguing Coach Cal's Wildcats this year?
In a pandemic year, they started the season. They didn't have one guy start the season, first and foremost, that ever put on a Kentucky uniform. 2, they lost this summer. All right, and the summer is kind of the time of the year where those young players, when you have all those McDonald's All-Americans come in, they better understand how hard you have to work, what type of teammate you need to be, how to play with other good players, understand what it is to put on that Kentucky uniform. Then the fall comes. Limited access, no exhibition games, no guarantee games to gain that confidence. And the most important thing is they have no guards. You think about Kentucky, you think of 1 of 2 things. They either have a play starter and a playmaker that makes the game easy for everyone else, or they have someone they can play through. Think about all the great players who play through. You can play through Karl Anthony Towns. Point guards and guard play, you talk about John Wall. You talk shot makers, you talk about Devin Booker. I mean, you can go down the list all along the way. They don't have anyone that looks like that. Here's the deal. Not all McDonald's All-Americans are built the same. That's just the way it is. Their guard play has been horrific. They're turning it over 21% of their possessions. That's a problem. They can't shoot it straight. And because at the end of the game, because they don't have that guard, that dynamic offensive player, that dynamic post player, that dynamic shot maker, they are absolutely really struggling the last 4 minutes of the game. And that's just the deal. It's going to happen. People say, well, John Calipari, he's losing it. Let's put it this way. Everyone get your licks in now. Because the last time I checked, all the dude does is win games. This year, it's an aberration. It's not who they are. It's who they are in this moment in time. John Calipari coaches his guys. They play hard. Some of those guys will stick around. He'll add players, and Kentucky will be back. They are the standard in the SEC. Just look at the history. It's real simple. Last year, they had a team that could have made a deep run. So now people can say the last 2 years they haven't been very good. Last year they were fine. They won another SEC conference last year. This year they're a bad basketball team. Duke's a bad basketball team. Oh, by the way, they both are relying on freshmen that just are not ready to compete at the level you need to compete in a pandemic, dealing with all the adversity and everything these kids have to go through.
All right, Seth, again, looking at the tournament, 6 of the top 10 heading into the tournament as of right now have ever won a championship, including Baylor, Gonzaga as well. Is this the first year that maybe we see a team, or is this the year that we see a team win for the first time?
Yeah, I think it is. And, so a lot of people say, you take Gonzaga against the field. And other people say, do you take Baylor against the field? Well, if you've got Baylor and Gonzaga against the field, you have two teams that have separated themselves. Now, the one team I'd be a little worried about is Michigan. I think Michigan, but they've been on pause. We haven't seen Michigan in a month. But Michigan's built because they have two upper-class point guards, so they take care of the basketball. They got two big athletic wing guys that can score at Franz Wagner, obviously Isaiah Livers, and they got the immovable object. But, yeah, this is the year. I think that you've got Baylor, you've got Gonzaga. Don't sleep on Illinois, maybe the best inside-out combination in college basketball with Ayo Dosunmu and Kofi Cockburn. I mean, those guys have been terrific. Dosunmu the other last weekend has a triple-double. You got Texas Tech and you got Houston. Houston's an interesting one. They had a bad loss against ECU, but they're an elite defensive team. They're an elite offensive rebounding team. The American Conference has been down, but they have a toughness about them. They're hard to prepare for because they're so good defensively. Texas Tech the same. So I would say I would take those 6 against the field, and I'd feel pretty comfortable about having a team that's going to win a national championship.
Two-time ACC Coach of the Year, ESPN College Hoops analyst Seth Greenberg, kind enough to join us here on Bet. Seth, fantastic job, man. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Stay safe.